As an educated meathead, I want to be doing everything I can to recover from each training session. Rapid reboot compression therapy is one of the tools in my tool belt that I not only use in just my office, but myself after every single leg session, and it really makes a difference. Use my promo code Dr. Marvin Says to save money on any of the compression systems. That is definitely Dr. Marv approved.
My position is, let's pull it back. Let's do as little as possible.
They're not good. Like, most training studies have so many errors, they would never be accepted by any journal.
But you know what? Continue to make your crappy gains when you have people, not just me, but people with experience who are sitting here telling you it's what you can recover from.
It's like I've been running on empty. Left my love with you back on 10th Street. I got a pocket full of nothing but memories.
You're between two dumbbells. Are your workouts intense enough? You can train too hard. Are they too intense? You following antiquated rules about how many sets you need to be doing in the gym? At the end of the day, optimizing your workload is the key to adding muscle. We'll cover all of this and more as we deep dive into the minutia in this episode of Between Two Dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. Joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead. Dr. Marv, I posit today that less is more. I know that's a pretty vague statement, but basically what I mean is we want to do as little work as possible to get the most benefit. And in our industry, we tend to do exactly the opposite. It's like, when in doubt, train more frequently, do more cardio. I need 50 grams of protein. That doesn't look like 50. I need to take more than that. And if you're weighted, it'd be 80. So we just tend to err on the side of more is better. My position is, let's pull it back. Let's do as little as possible. And I know that sounds like, you're not training hard enough. You're not manning up, for lack of a more unpolitical correct term. It's just about, at the end of the day, optimizing recovery, though. And if we keep the workload low, I'm focused more on workload as far as the training aspect, I guess. If we keep it low, and let's just, it's not enough. We're not progressing. It's much easier to then increase it, volume and or intensity and or frequency, and get that response quicker than if you're going in the other direction and you start training too hard, too much volume, and too much frequency, because then you're overtrained. So you can make that change and you can drop down and do less at that point, but you're still overtrained, right? So I'm trying to be efficient, and I'm trying to make the process, just optimize the process. Those are my thoughts. What say you?
So on paper, in a vacuum, I agree. We want to do the minimum effective dose. Yeah. So I agree with everything you're saying on paper. Minimum effective dose is something I harp on. However, I think a lot more people are not as intense as they think they are and have not earned the right to do less.
Okay.
I think after a certain time in the gym, yes, like you and I have put in the time, but the vast majority of people, no. So
basically what you're telling the viewers is we deserve it. They don't deserve it. They suck their week.
We're better than you. You should grovel. It's our world. You're living to it. Yep. So yeah. So that's basically what I'm saying. No. So like, why don't I define what my definition of intensity is? Because this is going to be different. Because what I thought was intense even 5 years ago, well, not within the last year, but we know that's weird. But, I'm in this weird stage of my training career. What I thought was intense 5 years ago, I would laugh at. And
I agree with that.
You should be saying that. So the first 5 years, you are not training intensely. Yes, you're making a lot of noise. Yes, you're grunting and growing. You might be puking on leg day, right? You might be doing all the stuff that we do as a badge of honor. But for me, training intensity is how far can you push a set and only have the target working muscle do the load. Meaning when it's your, say you're doing Widowmaker hack squats, right? Which used to be the best highlight of my week. Now you couldn't pay me to do a Widowmaker because of the mental gymnastics and hoops it takes to push through it. But for me, training intensity is the first rep. You are still flexing that working muscle as hard as possible as the last one, when every cell and ounce of your being is telling you, just push the sled up, quit contracting my quads like I'm doing a leg extension.
Right.
That is a trained skill. Now, if you're able to do that, then you've earned the right to do less is more, right? What did I grow the best on? DC two-way split, which was very, very low volume, very high intensity. And I loved it. But had I tried that, in the first 10 years of my lifting career, I would have thought it was the dumbest program ever because I didn't know how to work the target muscle. So that's where I'm saying I think most people haven't gotten to the point where they can take a set and wring out every little bit of effectiveness. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I don't think most people have earned the right to do less. Does that make sense?
It does. And I would even argue that there's discipline involved with this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's my connection. Intensity isn't strictly about effort. And this is where the discipline plays an important role. You need to be able, let me back up because I got all excited.
Yeah.
I call this controlled chaos. It's what I see or what I feel in my brain when I go into a set. Most people are saying, I don't care what happens, I'm going to die in the sweat. I'm thinking controlled chaos. I want the intensity, but I'm going to exercise the discipline to be not only intense, but to not break form and not do something that is just plain stupid at the risk of intensity. The intensity is there, but you can't trade the intensity for shitty form. I mean, not only for the risk factor involved as far as an injury, but you're losing the effectiveness of the intensity if that's what you're going to do. So I think that's the relationship that I see between, I don't want to say proper intensity, but efficient, optimal, is you have to have that discipline to still be a little bit psycho in your head, but not so psycho that you're trading these other things for the intensity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why I use a metronome, because on Widowmakers, my negatives would start speeding up when I'd watch the video. I'm like, that's not a full. So I took it to the umpteenth degree. I'm not saying you need to do that. Because again, you can make a set look intense. Like, I laugh at the story you talk about when all of a sudden the only time you heard Phil Heath grunt and groan is when you filmed. And then he feigned intensity. Right. Like, we're not talking about that, right? I am talking about not just pushing that hack squat leg press sled up, right? I am talking about contracting no matter what. It does. We've talked about it. It takes way more self-control and restraint, or whatever word you want to use, to do progressive overload the right way versus I just need to move it from point A to point B.
Okay, so
that's where I think
I'm looking around because I'm thinking, you're making my point.
But let's say this. So crazy. in one study, people ask them, hey, do you go to your leg press to failure? And then they did it. And then they were 7 reps shy from true failure when they reported failure on a leg press. Now, studies are rife with problems, right? Especially what we're talking about, because how many high-level, very advanced bodybuilders, 1, are going to volunteer their time, 2, let somebody else take over their training. But in that study, people were off by 7 reps.
How did they figure that out?
So that I would have to refresh. I haven't reread the whole study. I quickly looked right before we hopped on.
Fair enough.
But yeah, that one. So I'd have to look deeper into other studies. Again, 1 to 4 reps below failure on average, but that leg press one sticks out because 7 is a huge number. That I would have to, it's been so long since I've looked at it. It's like in my studies bank, but I haven't read it.
And I'm not shooting you down for the You're reiterating what the study says. I'm taking a shot at the study and just questioning the study, be like, what did they come back and go, well, I guess I could have done 7 more. Oh, okay. Could have done 7 more. I don't how did now you have to do it again. And I'm going to hold a gun to your baby's head and you don't stop, or I'm going to blow your kid's head off. I mean, I guess that would get the intensity out of them. I'm just wondering how they gauge that. That's all.
So fitness studies overall, like we got to have, it gives you an idea to look at, but they're not good. Like most training studies have so many errors, they would never be accepted by any journal. Like they would never accept a pharmaceutical or nutritional intervention study based on what we do for fitness studies. So some of the problems is there's always very, very low participants, right? Most studies are 6 to maybe 20 people, which is super low, right? You want super high numbers. It's called blinding, right? You can't do sham leg presses, right? And placebo, like, so there's no blinding of both the participants or the examiners or any of that stuff. There's no way to standardize stuff. So how do you standardize intensity, right? Like the leg press, they asked them to go what they thought was their 10 rep maximum, I'm going to hit failure. And then they ended up being able to do 7 more. So like, also what defines failure? Because you and I will define failure as probably like a 5 to 10% variance in form, when they might be, you go until the bar doesn't move, no matter what it looks like. Also, not to be mean, but usually it's broke undergraduate students doing the studies. And a lot of times big names will come in and attach themselves to their master's students. So not to call him out, but Brad Schoenfeld's name went on this super high training volume study that we talked about in the Dorian Yates episode, where it was ridiculous. I think it was 6 or 7 exercises, 5 sets to failure, 90-second rest. Oh, and they did it 3 times a week. Nobody could physically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And like he admitted he never oversaw the training. He just looked at the data. Right. So, and then what they call well-trained is not going to be you or I, right? Well-trained is usually 1 to 2 years of training experience. And what did we just say? Or maybe we haven't said it yet, but I think the first 5 years, just learn to have
non-sedentary.
Exactly. They're always super short study lengths. Remember, it takes 10 years to really build the physique, and these studies are usually 6 to 8 weeks. There's no nutritional stuff. Also, some people using AAS or SARM since they're college kids, right? We don't know that. And then again, these short studies, we're arguing over millimeters of growth, or maybe even fractions of millimeters because of short studies. So, and then as I've said before, the one thing that I think is the most important is we still are relying on the researchers to do correct statistical analysis. And we know the top 20 most cited strength and conditioning meta-analysis that are cited, 85% of them had at least one statistical error. And I don't think that's nefarious on the researcher's part.
Right.
Stats is complicated, but you can use stats to lie. So a 1% risk of tear to 2% risk of tear. I could say that is a 1% absolute risk ratio, which is true, or I could say that is a 100% relative risk ratio, and that is true.
Right.
So whenever you see these large numbers, 47% increase or decrease in XYZ, they're using relative risk ratios. This is a way to still be statistically correct, but you are massaging the data, and you could do whatever playing of data you want to get things to do it. I've read studies where they literally talked about, I think it was off the top of my head, if they consumed coffee or not. And then like socioeconomic class had a weight in a study about protein with kidney function. Like you could throw in all these wild things to make it do. So yes, I represent study guy here, but they are a piece of the puzzle. And for the most part, I don't hang my hat on fitness studies because of all of those reasons.
Well, it's why I don't like them. And that doesn't make me anti-study. And I don't want to go down this giant rabbit hole of studies, because we've talked about the studies before. So if everybody wants to hear, the viewers want to hear our position on studies, they can go to that episode. But basically, it's the reason that I dismiss them. If the variables were controlled, cool. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't extrapolate information out of those studies. But you know what? This is how I look at it. And this is why I'm kind of the meathead dinosaur, if you will, of the show. My research is 41 years of training and the thousands of clients that I have trained. I understand that to most people that's bro science, and it's not gonna, that's not gonna fly with the new generation of 25-year-olds who want to read all this literature about how to train correctly. But you know what? Continue to make your crappy gains, as far as I'm concerned. Continue to make your crappy gains when you have people, not just me, but people with experience who are sitting here telling you and giving you their information, or giving you information based on their experience, which is, at the end of the day, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's true, it can't be argued, it is a science project.
Mm-hmm.
It's my own research based on so many years, so many workouts, so many different people. It's not just me. It's not like I'm saying, oh, this is what I did. I may talk about what I do, but I also relate that to the thousands of people that I have trained over the last 25 years.
I know a thing or two about training, but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated.
Of the 41 that I have trained as well. So that doesn't make me right. It doesn't mean that I'm the only, the last word or what I say, is gold. What I'm saying is that is still research. It's just not the level of research that people are looking for to say, wow, that's not validated. Well, how do you validate it? What, you have controlled variables? You don't have any more than I do. It doesn't make any sense. So that's my little rant on that.
Experience. Yeah, I'll choose experience over research. Ideally, it's a bit of both. Right?
Sure,
that's
I
hopefully what
agree.
I am providing. But it just shows then it's going to be, everybody's different. But I just think a lot of people are trying to get, we've talked about this in other episodes, they're trying to get the scalpel out. Most people are getting the scalpel out when they still need to be using a shovel. And that's what I am saying okay, I'm going to be judgmental. What is most of these, and I say it lovingly now, like broccoli head, 150 pound with the t-shirts cut like this.
Sure.
They are doing, you only train in the 6 to 8 rep range, and I only do 2 working sets because of calcium, ion channel fatigue, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, do you not see, is your physique growing? Because it's clearly not.
And people can do what they want to do.
Now, if that's enjoyable to you, go for it. But don't tell me that's because I'll have people say, well, that's not the scientifically optimal way to train because it's not in this S, A, B, C, D tier crap that's really trendy. I had no right doing DC training in my first 10 years of training.
Well, that's a good segue right there, because
perfect.
I don't want people to think that I'm saying less is more strictly on just intensity. It's a good argument because I mean, you can train too hard. I know that it goes against what a lot of people think. When in doubt, train harder. I get that. But the reality is once you have spent that time and you have created, I don't even want to say like a certain amount of years. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm going to put it in a different format. Basically, you're seasoned. You have been training long enough. And some people could do it in 5 years. Some of it takes 15 years. Maybe some people never get it. But you're able to generate this level of intensity that you weren't able to create before. And it matters. It's the difference between, and this is another reason that I'm not so gung-ho on progressive overload, more weight all the time, more reps all the time, that sort of thing, is because you can still generate that intensity through other things like time under tension and just the connection and the contraction. That I hate to say mind muscle link because it's far more nuanced than that. It's, people think mind muscle link. If you've been training for a year, you're like, yeah, I get a pump. I feel the burn. That's mind muscle. That's not it. It's far more nuanced than that. So let's go in the direction more of let's say volume. Because I mean, this applies to everything. Yeah. But we want to stay focused on the training. So we have those equalizer bars. We have the volume. We have the frequency. There's still, the argument of RIR versus failure, drop sets and everything else. But even as far as volume, when I say less is more, I sometimes assume, more times than I should, that people are already training hard enough. So I want to pull, or this. They're comfortable with the level of intensity that they're using because that to them, relatively speaking, is training hard. I'm cool with that. I will assume that.
Okay.
From there, then let's look at the black and white stuff, like the level or the amount of working sets or the frequency, because those are black and white. They're easier to control. So the intensity staying the same, less is more, means to me then let's just cut the volume in half. Let's leave the frequency alone. Let's cut the volume in half. Let's see how you do. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm not going to get any work done. I'm not going to get enough work done. I'm not going to progress. Well, you're already not progressing, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. Because when things are going well, you don't change things. You don't fix what ain't broke. So ride it till the wheels fall off. And then if you plateau or you even arguably start to regress, then start making those changes. But pull that volume back, say 50%. That's just one example. It doesn't need to be 50%, but that's a good place to start, because a lot of people, again, erring on the side of doing too much versus pulling back. And in my experience, I have seen that when that is pulled back, when less becomes more, then that progress begins again, or it becomes better than it was. 50% volume? What do you think?
Yeah, because again, studies, blah, blah, blah. We have, you could find studies on high volume, low volume. As intensity goes up, volume has to go down. So we're talking about that. Volume, I think, also is really tied to your lifestyle. Meaning, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you hydrating? Right? You could get away with some pretty crummy programming if you have your recovery levels maximized, right? But yeah, I don't think beginners are doing that. So again, I probably just threw out a squirrel. But I do think, right, like how you're recovering is more than just what you're doing in the gym, which we know. So how do you figure out what that is? I don't know.
Well, I say just how well are you progressing? I think what you're asking is, how do you figure out if you need to pull back the volume? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I may be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, coming back to, like, if all of a sudden in the last month or two, you just realize, okay, the progress isn't there like it was before. Typically, I bet if we look at that training volume, because we're talking about the volume right now, it has crept up. Now, if you're doing a regular program that is outlined black and white, like a Meadows program or something, okay, cool. But it's another reason that my TeamSkip training protocol has the progressive volume, and then it starts over again. So that there are different levels of volume, so that you can, over time, again, patterns are everything. After you do 3 or 4 cycles of this, you might be able to look back, or should be able to look back and say, okay, I progress more when I do 2 working sets versus 3. And I progress more with 2 than I did with 1. While some people may say, you know what? My best progress is when I'm at 1 working set per exercise. And what am I going to say? Do 3? No.
Yeah.
We may go to 2, but we're going to focus the bulk of that time on 1, and then use the 2 for a week or 2 before we deload, kind of increasing a little bit, and then come down and rest again. So again, less is more. I'm going to continue to say it just because it's the crux of the point that I'm trying to make for this topic.
Oh, and yeah, again, I agree with you. I'm just trying to play the other side of people are going to try to do less volume. And when we change program dramatically, it's not necessarily the program's better. It's just fixing previous issues. So you are right. If somebody's over volume with junk volume, they pull back, they will feel better. Do you use soreness with your clients? Like if somebody's like, I am just crippled, like,
well, I will
take that into account? Okay.
Just because, having a crippled soreness is,
I don't think that's beneficial.
No, it's not at all. It's indicative of a very, if not an overtrained state, getting to the point where you're going to be overtrained. I would argue that if you're overtrained, you're likely not as sore. So there is that too. The soreness level almost kind of comes down.
Okay.
But basically people, and they misread this soreness thing, because there is a psychological component of being sore that we really do like. But we should have a soreness level. This is my take, and I'm wondering what you think. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being cripplingly sore, like an 11 is rhabdo, okay?
Okay.
So 10 being as sore as you could be, I want and I'm just going to speak for myself, which in turn, I guess, does imply that I want this for my clients. But if you're consistently training week in, week out, you haven't taken a break, everything is cool, your soreness should be about a 2. That's what I think. It should be very, very mild. It should be there, but it should be there not when you reach for something. I'm using that one, not against you because you're coming back from a layoff, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You shouldn't notice it like my legs. You shouldn't go down a flight of stairs and grip the railing knowing that I could fall at any moment.
No dive bomb in the toilet seat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as gratifying as that can be psychologically, that to me is a huge negative.
Okay.
You should contract or stretch that muscle. You almost should question, am I sore? And then go, oh, okay. There's a little bit of soreness there.
Yep.
That's where you want to be.
Skip, damn it. I'm trying to be different than you.
I literally into your brain without you knowing it. I went in there and pulled it out.
Because I literally asked the people I still work with, or if I'm doing consults, like, I want maybe tiny if you move, but I want it, you have to stretch and then you feel just a tiny bit.
Yep.
And I like 3 out of 10 maximum, and 3 out of 10 better be because we are focusing on bringing that body part up. And as a tangent, for me, my chest, even though it was my lagging body part, requires way less volume once I learned to contract it than every other part.
Same here.
I was like, what? My legs are growing and I have a little bit of soreness, but man, my chest is just, oh God, touching it. Like I would just touch it all day. Like, oh man, it's growing. It wasn't growing. It was getting sore. I finally learned how to contract it after 10 years, but I had to pull volume way back on my chest, even though it's lagging. Right. To now it's not as glaring as it used to be. In my mind, it still is, right? We talked about that with my physique episode. But so a little bit of a tangent, but I agree with you. And then, I don't like the soreness because your volume should be, the analogy is you dig a ditch and when you recover, you put just a little bit more dirt over that hole. And then the next training session, dig a ditch again.
And think about this. If you know you should be sore or think you should be more sore, what are you going to do? You're going to increase.
You're going to go too much. Yeah.
Exactly. Frequency, intensity, volume. And then you're at the point of no return again. I'm going to use myself as an example when I was younger in my teenage years and understand that this is in the 80s, late 80s. So I have no social media. I have no one to communicate with like we do now with social media and the internet and everything else. I'm literally getting my information from muscle magazines. That's it. So I'm in this mode at this time. It maybe lasted a year and a half, 16, 17 years old. And understand this, I was in deep at that point. I was, even though I didn't have a lot of resources, I was researching and trial and error, and I was OCD and all that good stuff. So I was ahead of my time being a teenager and having only about 4 years. Well, it wasn't even 4, it was only 2 or 3 at that point of experience under my belt, if you will. And I got into this phase where I was moving. It was time under tension before there was time under tension. And I was benching. I got to the point where I had previously benched as a 15-year-old kid. And this isn't astounding, but I weighed 155 pounds, 160 maybe. And I was bench pressing for reps, 225. It'd be 6 to 8 reps, but nonetheless, I mean, I come in and my warm-up was 165. Impressive.
Yeah.
Like first thing I do is put on 165. And what an arbitrary number, right?
Yeah.
But 45, 10, 5. And I hit 20 reps. Okay. That's my warm-up. Clearly this is heavy, but I'm doing 20 reps with it. Then I go to 185 and it comes down to 12 to 15. I go to 205. It's right around 10. And I'm happy then if I can go to 225 and I can get in that 6 to 8 rep range, which is decent for that age and, no gear. And I'm just a teenager, right?
Yep.
So from that, I transitioned to this very OCD kind of time under tension. And the reason that I did that was because I wanted that left-right symmetry. Remember, I talked about the different cut on my pec, and I'm like, oh, I got to make sure everything's right. It has to be sore, evenly sore, left to right. And I would train based on that soreness. I got down to the point where I was doing bench press with 115, a 35-pound plate on each side, right? 115. And they were super slow and methodical until I realized I'm actually getting smaller. And I was forcing that type of obviously it wasn't heavy, but that type of intensity with the other exercise and everything chasing that soreness. So from there, I finally realized it and got away from it. Ended up doing far less volume. I increased the weight and everything again and got away from the OCD-ness. It took me a minute. But this all comes back, and I'm going to continue to say this just because this is how I feel about it. Less is more. Now, it could be argued, well, you had to put more weight on okay, I had to put more weight on the bar. But the point is the volume, because that's what we're talking about right in the moment, is it had to come down. There are times where that increased volume is beneficial. The older demographic arguably should train with a little higher volume and less intensity when it comes to the amount of weight on the bar. That's just a ROI, risk to reward type of thing, where you want to try to minimize the time that you're going to have to stay out of the gym due to injuries. It's not like there aren't exceptions. What I'm saying is, when we talk about these topics, we almost have to cover this very vast, broad array of listeners and viewers who are taking in the information. So does it need to be individualized to you? Of course it does. So one person's volume might be different and a little bit higher or lower than the other person's volume. But I'm saying, as a blanket statement, the vast majority of people can pull that less is more volume back. If you've been training for quite a while and your intensity is high, sometimes that intensity can also be pulled back because you can arguably be training too hard. Typically, it's in combination with higher volume too, or arguably higher frequency, which I want to transition to the frequency component too. And when I say less frequency, I mean the workouts aren't as close together. You're not training chest on Monday and then again, I'm going to use arms because that's the one that is bastardized the most of all the muscle groups. No one goes, I'm going to train legs 3 times a week. No one ever says that. It's typically 9 out of 10 times it's the arms. They're not growing, so I need to train them more. Now I'm going to hand it off to you for that because I've been talking a lot and I've got big opinions on arm training and overtraining and direct and indirect work, but go.
Yeah, like I agree. The goal is to get to the point where you can get a killer workout in as few sets as possible because you have high motor unit recruitment. You're recruiting a muscle. You know how to train, blah, blah, blah. I just don't see a lot of people. They think they're there and they're not.
Right.
With arms, they're weird because for the most part, pulling back directly increases growth. Because people don't realize every time you're pressing, that's triceps. Every time you're pulling, it's more brachialis than biceps, but that's still a major elbow flexor. So you're still getting all this work. So I think, I'm in this weird caveat of beginners, I don't think should do direct arm work. Intermediate should, and then super advanced. I know. Sparingly do it. As you know, and you're doing it in cycles or blasts, right?
And I don't disagree for the record. I'm just saying good luck with that. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, because everybody wants bigger arms, but I'm like, you just need to, every exercise is a skill. So I am big on simplifying exercise selection for newbies. And then I had this weird thing though, right? With how injured I was this past year, for a period of time, I could only do 2 movements for chest, and my chest grew significantly doing only 2 movements. And on paper, this part of my chest should not have grown because I wasn't directly targeting it through my meathead biomechanics. I can't do guillotine presses. I couldn't do underhand flies. I couldn't even do a full stretch pec deck, right? My range of motion was pitiful because of the torn labrum. But my chest got bigger.
Yep.
So then again, it's like, good God, like it's cool how we have all these little aha moments as we go. I hated direct arm days until the last 2 years. And now I think there's a time and a place for them. Right. So I had to eat my words there. So I would love to think our listeners have gotten to the point where they can pull back volume 50% and grow. I think it's a good experiment. Also, if that does work, you need to look at your recovery, your programming, and there's something called periodization.
Right.
So if you haven't taken a deload in forever, maybe you just need a little bit of time to reset the system, right? Because you haven't taken time, because an advanced person can take a 35-pound dumbbell and destroy their biceps when an unadvanced person will take a 95-pound dumbbell and not destroy their biceps, but that heavy load. So the heavier a weight is, inherently on paper in a vacuum, you would recruit more motor units, but we know that an advanced person will take a small dumbbell and grow their biceps when that newbie kid is doing herky jerky, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they need to get their biceps to be a little sore, because they need that external load to fire it, because they do not have the mind to muscle connection. I don't have a hang up with the mind to muscle connection talk that you do. I think it is big. I think, are you getting a pump? Do you have a little bit of soreness? That should tell you. But your arms, what are your elbows doing, right? Because a lot of people have elbow issues with lifting. So,
right.
Yeah. So I'm cyclical with arms. That's enough of arms for me. What is your stance? Because you're very headstrong on it.
Well, that's why I put the frequency. If we take intensity, volume, and frequency, again, the 3 equalizer bars that I talk about the most, I put frequency as the least important. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not important. What I'm saying is intensity, I think, is a given. We all have that intensity level that we typically train at, that we know is hard relative to where we are, whether it's 2 years of training or 10 years of training or 20 years of training. We have that level of intensity. So it's easier training clients, especially when you're not one-on-one with them, to find or assume a level of intensity that will be consistent. So if I say to failure, my failure may be different than theirs, but theirs will be consistent because they have a measure there. It's their failure. From there, then I go to the volume and the frequency. The volume, again, can be black and white, so we can play with that. It's easier for, like I was using the 50% cut as my example. If you're normally, it's easy for a client to go, okay, I normally do 12, sets, and typically I'm not going to cut their volume unless I see that, okay, it's just pretty high, so let's cut it back and see. If you come to me and you're doing 6 working sets of chest, I'm probably not going to tell you cut it by 50% and only do 3. Okay. So I'm seeing that in the 12 range, 15 range. And I'll tell you this, I rarely see a client come to me who is doing upwards of 15 or arguably more working sets per muscle group that is under 40 years old. It's typically the older guys who get into that much higher volume. So there's another, another thing where you have to pull back against those people who have wired, or their brain is programmed or wired to, okay, this is what I do. And they've established those patterns for a long time, or that routine or that way of looking at things. So to be able to pull them back can be difficult, but it's easier for me to tell them than for them to do that themselves. So they typically will say, well, I haven't done that in a long time. Maybe that'll work. Or I haven't done that in a long time. That's not going to work. And then they do it, and then it does work. So again, coming back to the frequency, the point that I'm going to make with that is, and this is why I used arms as an example. A lot of times if someone's arms aren't growing, or they're growing, but they're not growing enough, then what do? They're going to train more frequently. And again, you touched on this, and it's very true. The amount of indirect arm work is underappreciated and undervalued by the average trainee or person who trains. So to understand that when you're doing back and chest and you're training hard and you're training heavy, the triceps and shoulders and biceps are getting a lot of work that you're not giving credit to. And then you're coming in and you're doing the direct arm work. And then you're saying, this isn't enough. I need to do more direct arm work. So then when you pull back and you look, if you're able to put everything on a chart or a table, you would clearly see, if there were, let's say, a bar graph, you would have arms, triceps, and biceps up here. You'd have shoulder work here, especially front delt work.
Yep.
And then you would have chest and back. And then you might have legs over here that is either the same or even less. So it's just such an odd thing. Well, it should arguably be inverted, or, the other way, because your smaller muscle groups are getting so much more work. And yet at the same time, you're not progressing. What is wrong with this picture? oh, wait, I heard Skip on a show the other day. He said less is more. So I'm going to do less leg work to make room for the, you know, I'm being sarcastic, but, you know, I'm going to do less leg work because I want to give more recovery time to my arms. No, cut the arm work down. And just for anyone who's listening and doesn't understand, I came to this decision on accident. My arms were better than everything else. So I wanted to back off on them, train them less frequently, and train the muscle groups that needed more attention more. And I found that my arms grew more when I trained arms, much like you were talking about, almost really every other workout or every other week. I would train arms every other week directly. So what does that tell you? I am clearly not a genetically gifted individual. So it's not like Phil Heath is telling you, or Ronnie Coleman is telling you, well, I only train arms every other week. Oh, I want to be like Ronnie. No, Skip, the dinosaur, the guy who has admitted for years that he has mediocre genetics and mediocre recovery, is saying, this is what I did. Wait a minute, I think I have mediocre recovery and mediocre genetics. Maybe I should listen to this guy. Nah, I'm going to train arms 3 times a week. F this guy.
And you could do it for a period of time, but there will be consequences. So again, cyclical. But yeah, earn the right to get to where Skip is talking about. And it takes time. It does take time. So this is a totally different conversation for somebody with 20 years of training experience to somebody with just 5. Now we're going to have outliers, right? But those people typically are gifted before they ever touch a weight, right? And we know who they are, right? So don't take your advice from them. It would be amazing to get to the point where you can reduce your volume by half. Also, think about all the free time you just opened up.
Sure.
Like, good God
no
almighty.
More wasted time. You're doing more work and not benefiting from it. And here's the cool thing. I should probably wrap it up with this. This is the coolest part of the whole thing. If you cut back and it doesn't work, let's just say you can go, you know what? Skip's wrong. Then you can start adding it back in, and you're not in an overtrained state. You'll start responding right away. Right away, versus if you're too high for too long and then you cut back. I always tell clients, you can't gauge what I'm telling you and whether it's working. You can't gauge that on the next week, arguably the next 2 weeks. Your body is overtrained. I'm telling you to cut back because you're doing too much work and you're not recovering well. So at least if you cut back, you can start to increase, and then you can see progress, and you can go, you know what? You can DM me, or you can get into the comment section. You can troll the hell out of me. Go for it. I'm totally cool with that.
Now, how long do you think somebody should do a training change to give it a fair shake? Because people do something for 2 weeks and then this doesn't work. 2 weeks is not long enough. I think if you're doing, specific to what we're talking about, if you're doing too much, it is going to take, I would argue, at least 3 or 4 weeks, but not before you can assess it, before you can actually really see and start to think, okay, I'm not overtrained now. Now I can start looking for the progress. But I mean, it may take a while. And when I say a while, it may take 8 weeks. It might take 10 weeks to really be able, 12 weeks to go, okay, 8 weeks is the minimum in my head. You got to give any program, change 8 weeks. You got to give it a fair shake.
Unless you're already low on the volume and you've been there for a while, then you make the change. Okay, cool, because you're not overtrained anymore. But again, you do have to, and some people might be listening to this going, 8 to 10 weeks, I'm going to lose all that potential growth. I mean, that's what our subconscious tells us. You're not growing anyway. That's why you're questioning if you should be doing more work. So it's just be fair and be honest with yourself, and then go, okay, maybe I should. It's much like, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but make this example, I'll leave it alone. It's much like the guy who has itis issues, and it's like, oh, you know, like it'll take care of it. Maybe it'll be gone in a couple. It's going to be gone. It's just going to go away when you continue to do everything that caused it to begin with. It's just illogical. But yet we hang on to those things. Why? Because we value the routine and the structure and the consistency of it, thinking that's going to build muscle while you're battling these things over here. It just doesn't make sense. There is a level of, you have to be sensible. You have to be logical in this endeavor, or you're just screwed anyway, no matter what I or you or anyone else tells you.
the last thing I will say, then we'll move on, is if you're cutting your volume by half, you will be a hell of a lot more focused on every work set, though. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, sure.
There will be, yep. So I think that is a valuable skill. I just was trying to play devil's advocate, but I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
When people come to me high volume, nope, we lower it. This isn't enough. Make it enough. You've got to develop the skill to make that enough and then earn the right to add back. So yeah, love it.
And remember, if no one listening remembers or listens to anything, they forget everything I said. Don't forget this. It's not about the amount of work you can do in the gym. It's not about the amount of sets. It's not about the intensity. It's what you can recover from. Everyone can do more work, but that's not how the rules are laid out. Who can work the hardest? Who can do the most work? That's not how it works. On that note, I hear the horse coming. Dr. Marv's Prehab Rodeo Round-Up. That one was a little different. I think my voice cracked and it broke, but it is what it is. Here comes, here comes Dr. Marv. Take it.
All right. So we're doing something totally different today.
Totally
different.
Totally
all
rad,
right,
man.
So, all right. So here's SHAWN CLARIDA. His best look by far. Good God. But I'm going to point out some things that my eyes saw. So one, God, he gave Keon a run for his money. But here's where my performance chiropractic can help posing. So if you look at his right to his left, how his right side is pretty locked up, especially in the lat and in the shoulder.
Freeze it when you get to the point where it can be, you know what I mean?
Yep. Right there.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
You see that? Yep.
That's because I have the same thing.
Correct. As soon as he opened up when I was watching the pay-per-view, I was like, oh, man.
If you'd only come down to Houston and come to let me work on you.
I find this kind of content a little cringeworthy, but I ran it by you and two other people of like, is this even appropriate? But obviously, the most muscled person, mini Ronnie Coleman, there was another shot where you could see it. But yeah, him and Keon had a great battle. I don't think anybody thought he was going to give Keon as big of a run for his money. Again, you could see it again, right? There's a difference. It's a little bit more pronounced on the other shot. But I see this enough, right? I brought this up in another physique critique we did. And then you're like, oh, I didn't even see that. But because I do this in office, here's a couple things. He's got a locked lat, right? But more importantly, he's got a locked up teres major and a locked up subscap. So teres major, we've talked about it. It could be as thick as a bicep. This is a major muscle that could really limit what's called upward rotation of the shoulder, which is taking this part of the shoulder blade and pushing that hook upwards, which is really important for shoulder health, shoulder function, and posing. And then this muscle here, his subscap, that's what's really binding up his lat. So there's the lat, there's your teres major, there's your teres minor. But that's getting all super bound up there. So I would have actually wanted to work on that because when the subscap and the lat gets tight, you can't flare the lat out. You can't upwardly rotate. Then when that happens, your body knows something's going on. And then this muscle called your levator scapula is going to start tightening up. When this tightens up, SHAWN is not broken, not fragile. He is amazing, right? I am not doing this to call shade. I'm just saying this is how the body works, how you can improve posing. This is going to get tight. When this gets tight, well, look how it attaches to the shoulder blade. It's going to be harder to flare your lats, right? So that compresses things. Then your rib cage, when I quit sharing my screen, will show how the rib cage will start to compress from this. Okay, so I would want to work on his levator. I would want to work on his upper trap because you can't separate them. And then other muscle that really matters for rib cage mechanics and shoulder blade mechanics, because yes, your rhomboids, because I would want to work on that. And then this guy, your serratus posterior superior, I find is really preventing a lot of people from getting awesome rib cage expansion and all that. So what do I mean by rib cage expansion? So you with me so far?
Oh, yeah. Listening intently, be honest with you.
Rib cage takes, could change shape based on muscle tone, how we breathe, blah, blah, blah. Because Sean is so damn muscled, like arguably the most muscled person per square inch in the history of the world, he's already going to be compressed front to back, right, in his rib cage, which will change things. But with that levator being tight, then it's going to start to compress other parts of his rib cage, which makes it harder for his shoulder blade to move. With Sean being crazy in all aspects, right? His rib cage is going to be compressed front to back. That'll make rotation and being able to present himself on those twisting shots harder. And then with the levator being chronically tightened, that's going to start to compress other parts of his rib cage, which will make it hardest for his shoulder blade to move. So it's like 1 + 1 = 3. So if you're a bodybuilder with this issue, right, we need to work on, well, I'll do his arm. We got to work on the armpit. So the teres major, the subscap, the lat. Probably the scalenes a little bit will probably be tight. There's probably a breathing issue there. Levator, trap, work on that. Get the rib cage, right? So you'll be doing rib cage breathing drills. You're going to be working on serratus anterior activation, right? Because that's your bodybuilding posing muscle. If you take nothing from the segment, start working your serratus anterior. That is so important for posing and shoulder health.
How?
So booty band wall walks.
Okay.
That's my starting start. I do a couple other things in office, but that's the one I will give. That's one of the more impactful exercises I could give anybody. And if you have shoulder complaints, when I took a world-renowned international sports chiropractor's shoulder course, she said strengthening that muscle resolves 80% of chronic shoulder pain. I think that number is a little high, but it shows its importance. And we know in a study, it is the most undertrained muscle in the upper body. And that is how you do your lat spread. So you better believe. So what was really cool is Skip coached a first-time competitor, and I did the performance chiropractic for a first-time competitor. So that was a cool blending. You better believe he had specific drills to do backstage before he pumped up, addressing the rib cage, addressing this stuff, because he had the same issue. It's relatively common.
Yeah.
But
to what degree is the difference?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it just shows how all of a sudden this can kind of spiral out of control and you're doing everything right and you just need a little bit of outside help. So hopefully that puts some stuff on people's radars. That's what I spot with my eye, which is good and bad, because then I was so fixated on it. I actually couldn't even remember his posing routine.
Yeah.
So I had to rewind the pay-per-view because I was like, I get so it's Holly will be like, quit analyzing people walking by. I know that's what you're doing. I was like, I know I can't turn it off, but start working on that. It can make a massive difference for posing, for training. But yeah, super common. So hopefully you have something to look at and know what to do moving forward.
Good information. Good information. On that note, Skip's cheat meal review. We got the number one cinnamon roll on Skip's list.
Yep.
Number 3, real quick, the Hive in New York. Order them through Goldbelly. Number 2, 350 Bakery in Pittsburgh. Crazy good. Can't get them through Goldbelly yet, but if you're in Pittsburgh, watching a show, in a show, competitor, whatever, get it, go up the hill, and then a little bit down into it. Just you wouldn't even know it was there. It's just in a tiny little neighborhood residential, and it's just right there. Not a very big place. Awesome. Follow him on Instagram. You'll see what I'm saying. The number 1 spot, much like the Bardo burger, there is number 1, and then there's 2, 3, 4, 5. The gap is so big. As good as the Hive is, as good as 350 Bakery is, Wicked Bread. Check them out on Intense Muscle. I mean, is that a cheap plug or what?
Wow.
Anyway.
Well played. Well played, sir.
Instagram. Check them out on Instagram. Wicked Bread, Davie, Florida, which is a part of Fort Lauderdale, basically. I sent you, it's on the screen too, but I sent you, Marv, the video. During prep, one of my cheat meals, it only happened once. I got Wicked Bread. I drove down there. It's almost an hour. Brought it back. You can't order from Goldbelly. I know. I didn't want to do that to the viewers, but the truth is, it's so above and beyond everything else. And it's so number 1 that I couldn't leave it out. I almost said
That's
couldn't
fair.
not. I'm not a double negative guy. I can't do that. But I couldn't leave it out. So I had to be honest. Wicked Bread, above and beyond everything else. I mean, you just see it. It's dripping. It's not just dripping with frosting. It's dripping with literal oil and cinnamon and just, oh my God. And they do other things like they put bacon on it. They'll have specials where they might have a peach one or what. Cinnamon roll, it would just smothered in. You can taste the butter and the granulated. You can taste the grittiness of the sugar in the frosting. It's nice and heavy. I'm not a light, fluffy frosting guy. Same with the carrot cake. I want it heavy. I want it to hit my gut. I got those 3 pieces down.
Do you even cheat, bro?
I was literally like, I can't take another bite yet. I could probably eat some pizza right now. I was just all sugared out.
Yeah.
Follow them. Maybe they'll be on Gold Belly, but if you're in Fort Lauderdale, it's an absolute must. I pass this on to Phil Viz. He lives close to Fort Lauderdale. He's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Check them out. That's my top 3 for cinnamon rolls. I got to find another topic. So, or another food to cover. I've covered the burgers. I've covered the cookies. I've covered the cinnamon rolls. So get into the comments if you're listening.
Are you a milkshake guy?
I am, but and I can do that. I can absolutely do that. But it's not. It's not like
chains.
In my wheelhouse like these other things have been. But and someone even said pizza. Same thing. You know. Okay, cool. But you know, I'm trying to stay in my wheelhouse at the same time. But milkshakes, you know, I can think of a few off the top of my head. That'd be a good one too. So I'm open to any suggestions. I always do my due diligence when I travel, so I know where to go before I'm even there, that sort of thing. So let me know. I want feedback on it. Q&A time. You got a question in there?
Yeah, I think we could knock out 2 because one of them is perfect for what we just talked about.
Okay.
I've been saving this one from Blunt Force Tanya, who's wicked smart.
I love that name.
Yes. When you guys work with newer clients, do you have a tier system or levels towards form mastery and intensity you work them through? I personally have 4 for mine. Level 1, pure technique and form mastery. Level 2, pushing hard through reps with that. Level 3, failing with that form intact. Level 4, partials, post-failure training with that form intact, if even indicated for the client and the goals.
First, that's a great tier level. It's a great structure. Yeah, it's really good. And more trainers should do that.
Mic drop.
Here is my thing. And I'll be honest, I don't do that. The reason I don't do that is because I've been in the industry for so long, there is this assumption, and it's a relatively safe assumption because of, you know, me doing this for so long, that the people who come to me they're not typically the, I've been training for a few years type. My demographic is the older demographic that even if they took a long layoff, they have this solid base or this solid foundation of training, whether it be, you know, in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s, you know, whatever. They're not typically coming to me as newbies. However, that being said, no matter their level of experience, whether they're a veteran or not, I'm always open and suggestive about critiquing their form. So it's not something that's written into my programs, like you need to send me, you know, X amount of videos for your form and mechanics for me to clear up. But if there's ever any questions and my clients are clear on this, you are welcome to send me 10 videos every week for me to assess your form and mechanics if you feel there are any concerns there. Or if they come to me and they say, hey, you know, my chest just is not growing. You know, I don't know what to do. The first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at the mechanics. I want to either work on that or improve on that or eliminate that, kind of check the box and put it to the side and say, okay, it's not that. So it's there, questioning it, assessing it, but it's not, I don't have a format in place or a specific structure of levels, but it is a good idea depending on your demographic.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the last 5 years, it's literally, I do not work with beginners. I cannot handhold you, like, because my time is so short anyways. That's why I typically just do consults and then have workout programs for subscription. In the beginning, I kind of touched on it earlier. We might only have somebody, when I was an in-person trainer, remember I did that for almost a decade, we might only do 1 or 2 movements per body part starting out until they could learn it. So For chest, it was typically a dumbbell press because I like one free weight movement, and then usually a pec deck fly because it's stable. They could teach them how to contract their chest, right? And what it feels like to have a chest contraction. So we might do the same movement for quite a while and then branch out. I recommend if you have a lagging body part, like we talked about, if you find one or two movements, just ride those movements till the wheels fall off.
That's right.
And then maybe try and add. So do those two movements first, and then maybe bring in a third, and then try and bring your skill up there. Right. And if you're like, okay, I've done this third movement for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, I'm not getting better at it. Scratch it, do the next one. But I agree with her of I'm always big. Number one order of operations for me is execution. Intensity second, load is last. I don't give a bleep what's on the bar. I mean, it's got to be enough. But so I like she has graded stuff. And I like that she said post failure is not necessary for most people. I rarely do drop sets. I like cluster sets. I like mechanical drop sets because of the thinking man problem I have. I always want to be in that pose. And then, and stuff like that. But yeah, and it's perfect with what we talked about earlier. It is a skill to maintain high execution as you hit failure and then not go, oh, like Austin Stout talked about, oh, let's bring in my hamstrings on a hack squat, which technically can't happen. But his point was making a good point of you're getting off the working muscles. Now you're using everything. Right. I might have done 4 or 5 perfect sets in my entire training career. If I'm like, and I'm talking,
yeah, I see your point.
Perfect, right? Now I am a perfectionist, but it shows the point. So I agree with you. Most people should have tiers like this. I think her tier system everybody should use that personally. So I like it a lot.
Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com. Where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
Very cool. Very cool. I agree with that.
I think we could do one quick one last one. From dgrow39. I'd love to hear, and this is for me, your thoughts and tips to reduce low back pain with a tight QL or psoas. I use a SoRite tool daily, and that's helped. I have a lordosis, and I have tried different techniques. Would love to hear your thoughts. So here's the deal. Actually, let me share my screen.
What was the name again?
It's one of your clients, dgrow39. Isn't it Devin? Okay, Devin. Yeah, he asked me on Instagram. I was like, "Can you ask on YouTube?" So ask questions on YouTube because for me to remember, it's going to be hard. But real quickly, we've talked about this briefly. People don't need to realize, because what do we do for hip flexors? We do what he does. I'm only going to stretch it or I'm going to dig into it. I'm never going to train it. And they don't understand the relationship. Here's your hip flexor. Okay. And then guess what opposes that? Your glutes. Okay. This is a bicep and a tricep. When one lengthens, the other one has to shorten and vice versa. So getting into your glute, I really like a glute bridge, which you see on screen. This is a rugby guy with chronic left anterior hip pain with his hip flexor. We start training the glutes. It'll get the hip flexor to relax. Okay. It's called reciprocal inhibition. So getting into the glute, I really like a glute bridge for the hip flexor in particular. If you're having issues with the muscle,
those two muscles in the front.
I know, right? I was waiting for you to do it. Yep, I know. With the update, they used to not be there, and now they're there.
Well, that's why I noticed it. I never saw them before.
I know. I hate it. It throws me. I'm like, complete anatomy. I don't need it that real. So, but a lot of times people think this is called your pectineus. It is an adductor. People think that's a hip flexor because it's so high up. When we have that, then I want to get more on the glute med, right? But the glute max is big. And then train your hip flexors. Like nobody ever trains them. So on screen is the world's easiest way to train your hip flexor. Now QL, I forgot to show that, but QL goes from, it's a deep muscle. I've shown it before. It goes from your ribs to the top of your pelvis. Bodybuilders and powerlifters are notorious for having QL issues. Why? Because we do everything straight up and down. We do nothing side to side. We don't rotate, heaven forbid, right? So that's really important for walking mechanics. So to relax it, I get people in side-to-side movements. We'll just leave it at that for now. But we're going to get them in the frontal plane where we're doing side-to-side movements. But then my favorite way to strengthen it and also get it to relax a little bit, because strength is medicine, right? Suitcase carries, good old-fashioned suitcase carries. Grab a heavy weight, walk slow, don't speed walk. Then your foot has to work, your QL has to work to balance it, right? So I could have a 65-pound weight in one hand. That will load my core more than 2 70-pound weights. Even though the 65 is less than half, because it's uneven, that QL, because it's on either side of the spine, has to balance. So I will do other mobility stuff to relax it and then bring in the suitcase carry. And suitcase carries, last little gem, also work on internal rotation of the hip, which is what most bodybuilders need, because bodybuilding is internal rotation driven, while strongman is more external rotation driven. And if you're not able to rotate your hip in, you're not using your assets, pun intended. And that also could contribute to tight hip flexors because you're not getting into the glute. So it's all tied together.
Are we getting any significant amount of QL work doing walking lunges, holding dumbbells?
Yeah, so that's still going to be stabilizing with free weights. Yep. But the really uneven nature, when it's super uneven, yes. But yeah, the QL does have to fire. That's probably the most direct QL work that we do. I mean, occasionally somebody will do a side plank, right? Like Copenhagen planks, man, talk about getting your adductors, your QL, your glute, muscular slings. But bodybuilders typically don't do that. I make my bodybuilders do that because of everything is straight up and down. We do no side to side. We do no rotation.
Nice.
Yep.
Good information as usual.
There we go.
On that note, we got to get to getting. Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. If you didn't like the show, shame on you. Pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. Anyway, it should sound a little something like this. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link to save 10% on not just TeamSkip protein, but every supplement they sell. And just so that you didn't miss that, it is TeamSkip protein, because I said it a little quickly. You can reach out to Dr. Marv at theeducatedmeathead.com, and you can reach out to me at TeamSkip.com. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to click on this link for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.